To start, I would like to ask our starting question that I usually ask everybody. And that question simply is, who are you and why do we care?
Good question. I don't know why you care, except if you have an audience who wants to get better at playing tennis, we may have something that they can find useful. Other people are finding it useful. It's something I think that cuts across all levels of tennis. But anyway, so who am I? I'm a recovering retired teaching pro. Who had
Recovering teaching pro. I love it.
Yeah. People ask me from time to time, do you still? I said, nah, I don't teach anymore. It would be malpractice. But anyway, um, I had a long career. I taught for 37 years in the southeastern Virginia area. Had some nice jobs. Um, One of the things, there's some things that happened along the way that I think put me in situations that turned out to be really good situations. The first one was about 15 years into my teaching, I charted my first match at a 9-court indoor facility in Aurora, Illinois. And my kid was on court number 5. And I had to figure out a way to at least keep score. And so I had a pad of paper. And it was one of those times when you hear songwriters say, gee, I wrote that song in 10 minutes. Well, I've had some things in my mind. And we can talk a little bit about that, but that was kind of a huge thing. I had a 5-year period of time where I traveled with a really good junior player whose parents had enough money to take me all over the place. So that was great. So we'll come back to that one. The second one was I had a chance to go to France for a Big 12 and under tournament. And when I got to France, I learned about how they rate/rank players. A little bit different than the NTRP that was, the only thing at the time here. And then 5 years later, I was looking at tennis scores in the newspaper. I don't know how many hundreds of scores, but you remember the old days when they would print scores in the newspaper, the little small print. It struck me, I've been looking at these things for years, but it struck me that the most frequent score on the page was 6-0. Next most frequent score on the page was 6-1. There's just so many matches that weren't close, but there were a lot of matches. I came to find out that more kids play high school tennis than play sanctioned junior tournament tennis by a margin of about 3.5 to 1. And so that was really the birth of what came to be known as, it is known as, Universal Tennis, or UTR. Collected a lot of data and ultimately came up with a way of distinguishing levels of play. And I got very lucky with the right people showing up at the right time. I had a guy that I was working with, Miguel Rosa, introduced me to Alex Concado, who was both a software developer and very proficient in math. And he took the basic idea of what's a competitive match, what's a decisive match, and what's a routine match, and put it into what you now see when you go look at UTR ratings. That was a long haul. Other guys, Steve Clark, Daryl Cummings, Salman Bader. And then I was introduced to Dave Fish, coach at Harvard University for like 40 years. And the big thing about Dave was he was just hooked into a world that was way beyond the world I was hooked into. He had 40 years of Harvard tennis players on his Rolodex. And next thing we know, we're talking to the ITA, Intercollegiate Tennis Association, and we get in with them. Being from the Mid-Atlantic area, I knew getting into Mid-Atlantic was going to be probably the last thing that would ever happen in my life. So the next good thing was Northern California came into my life. 3,000 miles away, they got it. a person named Amy Jensen, worked for the USTA NorCal, and she started doing stuff in Northern California that was fantastic and still is, I think. Following her, we picked up Midwest, Southern California, Southwest, and finally Texas when we ended up at some point attracting some money. That's a whole different thing. We won't
Dave,
talk.
let me ask you, cut you off real quick.
Yeah.
When did this, what was the timeline? When did when did it all start?
Started in 2005, 2006. We got to the ITA in about 2013 or 14. And for me, Mark Leslie showed up in 2017 and said, "You guys are so dysfunctional, I'm going to buy you out and put you out of your misery." And he did. And I got to buy a nice red truck.
I was going to say, you don't make it sound like you're done after that. So it wasn't a buyout that says you get to live on a beach, huh?
No, no, it wasn't that. It wasn't no living on the beach. But then that did send me back to the situation back in the mid 80s where I started charting matches, and I went back to that. And that basically is when Steve Clark, who was the algorithm guy at UTR for a number of years, he and I continued to work, and we've been working on seven-shot tennis. You know, if UTR was all about what the scores were and being able to put people into levels so that they would have better play, that was the whole intention of the thing. And you know, a byproduct of that was, yeah, you have girls playing against guys, men playing against women, juniors playing against adults. And we tested all of that stuff for about 4 or 5 years in our area here, and then realized we had something pretty good. What seven-shot tennis is about, well, what did you do in that match you just played? And so that's where we get more to the granular part about, you know, how points came to an end, what happened getting to the end of the point, and putting all of that into something that if people go to our app, which is sevenshottennisapp.com, you can go into the classic matches and look at some of the stuff we have there to get an idea of what we do. We'll work with anybody, but we have a target audience of trying to get more college folks involved. And we're currently working with a couple of kids who are from different areas who are good enough to get to Kalamazoo, and they just both finished playing Winter Nationals, and we put together 4 or 5 of their matches and turn around and feed them back information. The key thing that has really moved us along with seven-shot tennis was when you go to what we call the breakdown, and you see all these numbers, and you say, what am I going to do with all this stuff? All you got to do is click on one of the numbers, and it'll, if you want to go look at videos for what those numbers represent, you learn very quickly what's going on. And so
to back up a little bit, take a step back, I've seen this. Bobby's had a brief glance at it, but I know he wants to dive further into it. What is the 3-sentence version of what is seven-shot tennis? It's match charting.
Okay. There's a basic philosophy to seven-shot tennis.
Okay.
And the first thing was, well, you know, how did the point come to an end? And it's either a plus or a minus. One of the things that drives me crazy is watching matches on TV, and they give you all the stats at the end of a set or a match, and you add it all up and say, wait a minute, there's a lot of missing points there. Yeah, you gave me all these winners and all these aces and everything, and you gave me some unforced errors, but you're missing about a third of the points, most of which would be points that you had to make a decision. Was that a forced error or an unforced error? And somehow this has stymied the people that do this sort of stuff. And we think, well, if you don't agree with us, just tell us, we'll have a discussion, and that would probably be pretty good to have a discussion. If you think that was forced, and you know, if you think it was unforced and we thought it was forced, that can lead to a good discussion. But most people like the idea that they get credit for hitting a good shot, even if it wasn't a winner. And there are more of those in most cases. Most cases, probably more of those forcing type shots than outright winners. So the philosophy is that it end is a plus or a minus, minus being an unforced, plus forcing shot, winner, fluke, net cord, that sort of thing. Then the next thing is, well, who did it? Who did the plus? Who did the minus? And the next three things, well, what was a stroke? Anybody can identify forehands and backhands. But the next thing is, well, where did it go? And that's where when you go to our website, you look up and see, gee, there's this court here that has 1, 2, 3 up the middle and 4, 5, 6 over on the sides in what we call singles alleys. And then there's this touch zone up at the net, what we call the 7. It doesn't take very long to figure out that if you're a pretty good player, you hit closer to the baseline than the service line. And if you're a really good player, you hit most of your winning shots into the singles alleys, cross court deep, short, or down the line. That's the 4, 5, 6. And if you get lucky, you hit an occasional good drop shot that lands in the 7. If you're just mediocre, you're living your life in the 2. You get it over the service line, but it never comes anywhere near the baseline. And there you are. So how can you improve your game? First thing you can do to improve your game, take advantage of the technology that's out there today, and there's a lot of it. Put a camera or a phone up on top of a fence behind the court, make sure it's angled appropriately, and video your match. You can figure out a lot of stuff on your own. You send us the link to the video, we can break it down and give you a not too difficult way of looking at it, but there's all kinds of ways you can filter things.
And so within this complicated scenario, what your offer is, what you do for the tennis player is if I send you a video, you're going to chart my match. And the way I'm simplifying is to say, but you're going to not just chart my match with what happened. You're going to chart my match with exactly what happened that also essentially includes advice, correct?
Includes what? I'm sorry.
Advice, meaning here's where you can improve. Here's
Oh,
where.
yeah. We put together a game plan.
Okay.
But the big thing is every point we chart gets linked to a video for that point. So let's say a match has 140 points. That's 140 videos, all of which will have a caption that says this was a plus.
And so I can clip to any. Clip. You link to every clip and I say, well, this is, it looks like it went to, the only one that went to 7. Cool. What happened there? And you will show me that point.
Exactly.
That's cool.
And then we have a scorecard, which I think is really neat, but most people want to go straight to the video, but you can filter all kinds of things. I want to see all forehands and backhands that went to the 4. Bingo. For this player or for both players. I want to see all, I see a lot of kids who, and I say kids, college kids as well, haven't got a clue. Gee, I have a great forehand, but I hit 11 backhand errors and 8 of them were in the net. Not a very difficult correction if you're aware of it. So awareness is the first thing.
Yeah, and in that case, it's something that isn't in every obvious match charting system because
the conversation you made an error on your back.
Yeah. So the conversation here where we talk about your uniqueness that says, okay, it's not just match charting. It is match charting with better information, more specific information, as though it's coming from a coach instead of a computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
There's another part of what we do that goes hand in hand with that, which is we tag points. And what do I mean by that? Usually I use 5 tags. The first one is what we call impact serves. Now that's my way of saying serve plus 1, if you're familiar with that term. Does the serve have enough impact that the next shot or 2 that you got, you were able to feed off of that and win the point. So then you have impact returns. One of the things that we see a lot of, and some of the other people who are in this world, players who are developing go crazy thinking they're going to hit great returns of serve. And I'd really rather see a player get through a match with maybe 1 good return and 1 error or something like that. So they're getting the ball back in play, and now can you really play tennis? So then we look at impact shots that were shots beyond the serve and return. And sometimes a player makes a really significant defensive play. I like to show that to players to make them feel good, even if they lost. Hey, you really played good defense. You stole this point from this guy. And then the fifth category that I use a lot lately, particularly with some of these kids that we see going to Kalamazoo, some of the college kids, is what we call points of interest, which is usually a way of saying you should look at this point, these points, figure out what you did that you shouldn't have done. Like macho returns, we discovered that a little bit with return of serve, but there's also the macho attack, which is very, very popular these days, which is I'm going to hit the ball as hard as I can. I'm 3 feet behind the baseline, and I'm going to run to the net as fast as I can. And whoops, the guy hit it back at my feet. And I'm not even at the service line yet. And I pop it up, and this guy gets a passing shot on me. That's the macho attack. Whereas when you're a little bit more than, say, 2.5, 3 feet inside the baseline, you hit the same shot, you get in, you probably win the point on that outright, or you got a pretty simple volley or overhead. That's the tactical aspect of things. And so we filter things by tactics. Behind the baseline, neutral, and deep. I'm not really sure what neutral is anymore, but it's an old term that we've been using for a long time.
People understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in front of the baseline, it's maneuver, attack, and conclude. Maneuver trying to get the other player out of the middle of the court, attacking the player, trying to get to the net, including winning the point. All along the way, you could be put on defense anywhere in there, and you've got to make adjustments and adapt.
No, and that's good. And I'm fairly familiar with it, so I hope I'm not missing something. Bobby, I'm sure you've got questions.
No, I mean, same thing. I'd like to just simplify it. So, Coach, if you're somebody comes to you and says, "What's you want to improve your game? What's the number one thing you do first before you do anything else? What do you do from a tactical game standpoint?" What would you tell them?
The most frequent error we see?
No, I mean, just a general broad.
Yeah, the general question. I mean, the general question, you're trying to hit too many good shots from the wrong place in the court. You make, I'll go back to the first time I charted a match. The kid that I was working with made 51 unforced errors. Most of those were from behind the baseline into the net. The kid she was playing made 39 unforced errors. That's a lot. So the score was something like 5-4. We went home, we looked at all the stuff. This was long before video. And we worked and we worked and we worked. 6 weeks later, she played the same kid. There was no significant change in her strokes other than she wasn't hitting the ball in the net anymore. And she wasn't hitting them straight down the middle long. She had enough spin to get that down. And the score was 6-0, 6-1. And she was off and running and became, won a couple of gold balls, was an All-American in 1 year, and then decided to turn pro. It was not because of my great understanding of the game. It was what the game was telling us when we actually wrote stuff down. And then that created an understanding, a communication between the two of us. So this is largely what we're trying to do now with 7-Shot is help players and their coaches communicate with one another better. It has a language to it.
And Bobby, this reminds me of a similar conversation we had recently where the number, you can't argue with the math, right? Can't argue with the numbers. I mean, players will, don't get me wrong. I'm sure Dave has seen that too. But to be able to, as a coach, go to the player and say, this is the problem and point to it, as opposed to, I feel like you didn't do this enough, right? It's no longer about feelings. We have the data.
Yeah.
You know what, sweetie? You hit 51 balls in the net. You can figure out why you lost. So let's get to work.
Yeah. You hit it right on the head. And it's as simple as that. We're trying to do a lot of things with what we do have. We're trying to aggregate matches and give them, over a 4 or 5 match period, what will be your aggregate stuff, and you can go right to the video to see that. That's coming out in a couple of weeks. This I think college coaches appreciate because they can see, how's my player playing now 6 weeks into the season versus where we had the player at the beginning of the season. And the same thing with,
And
you know,
Bobby works with more high school players than I do, which I think should be prime for this, right, Bobby? So how do you get them from your point of view to say, hey, this is going to be good for your development?
Well, I'm with Dave. I think essentially you've made the college coach's life unbelievably easy between UTR and now. I mean, to me, the analytics is great, but if at the college level, if they still need to be told, we have bigger issues. I would love to see this started at a younger age. And just because of in high school tennis, you have such a too many times the coach is not what you'd call a qualified coach. He's the band instructor. He wants to make a couple extra $1,000 a year. Down here, he plays alto, so he has some familiarity with how to score a tennis game. So boom, we're going to make him the tennis coach. And, all the bad habits just continually get reinforced. How do we make this part of a package to a school to say, hey, look, we're going to do how many matches for you, or just one match? Because I would think as you said, first time you get it, things are not dramatically different from the last match they played, nor will they be dramatically different from to the next match they played, other than we're giving you a benchmark and now's the time to try to improve in the next match.
yeah, high school tennis, it's an area that I want to crack into a little bit more. The kid that maybe so many high school players are not as committed as the kids, the small percentage of kids who play all the big tournaments and everything. But you want these, I mean, over my period of watching this stuff, a lot of times it's that kid that's still playing 20, 30, 40 years later, as opposed to the big star that says, yeah, nah, I don't want anybody beating me that would never would have beaten me, so I'm not going to play anymore. And,
Yeah, I don't play anymore for that reason.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go. You understand what I'm saying.
Keep my record intact.
Exactly.
Well, but we're marketing to what we've proven, especially with the Division I player quits.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah. You're right.
75% of the players never pick up a racket again. So we're introducing them to something that ends with them, unfortunately. I just think if we got the kid, and I was very fortunate. I don't know whether I was a pitcher in baseball, an undersized pitcher in baseball, so I wasn't overpowering anybody. I had to get people out by hitting spots on the plate, always changing speeds. There was from the day I started, my father, taught me different things because he's like, you're not going to be big. So we got to figure out different ways. And I took that to tennis, and I could see little things of balance and that always, seemingly were natural to me that I didn't realize I had a big advantage of other people. I just didn't have the stroke repetitions that I needed. But I would love to interject this to the kids because I always talk about with the chess idea that, you're not winning too many times with a pawn. And what I was getting to was, simplifying the game to them. Look, hit it deeper, like you said. And the two most important shots of tennis are get your first serve in and put pressure. Again, not like you said, don't even say hit a winner, put pressure on your opponent's second serve. And if you can do that effectively, you probably have a very good chance of winning. So let's start by simplifying it. And here are the numbers that prove what I'm saying.
You got it. That's basically that's exactly the same thing we're seeing, and it's not rocket science. People think they're going to get some intricate plan of hit the over here and hit up high to the backhand and hit all this stuff. You got to learn yourself first. What do you do, and now you can start thinking about learning the opponent, and then you're pretty good at that point. So we try to help that along. That's our whole reason for being.
I like the idea because it also puts some accountability with the coaches who are teaching blast off. And, I get the kids, I call them, they go from lazy to crazy. They don't move their feet, and then you get on them a little bit, and now they're swinging from, and hitting the fence. It's like, whoa, we're trying to now Goldilocks. Where's just right?
Yeah. I
We've
like
just
that.
hit the two extremes. How do we get you to just right?
Yeah, that's as well as a former teaching pro, and you guys are still at it. I'm still trying to think I'm in the education business. This is what you're trying to teach people, how you can become better. And your performance, it just one of the things I do really feel good about UTR is you could lose a match, but if you had a good score against some guy that maybe was supposed to beat you worse, you got better. Well, same thing in this sort of thing. Your performance losing a match might be the best you ever played. And you should know the things that you did well and continue to work on those things that are going to
Yeah, and
help you.
that's where the data matters, especially as a coach, to be able to go to a player and say, "Yep, you lost, but look at this. Look at the improvement. Look at all of these things that have changed for the better."
Yeah.
And I like your example of UTR. You can take a loss, but your UTR goes up depending on
Yeah,
what
what the
was
scores were.
expected to happen in that
Right.
match.
Exactly.
And I think with data like what you have and the advice that comes with it, like I said, it's not just charting from a magic app where it does it automatically. And it's not just charting from your mom and dad clicking the right buttons in the app. It really is advice. It really is coaching that comes with it that says, these are the mistakes, but they're also a choice. It's a targeted mistake that you're able to go through, and you offer the service. So if I send in my video, you offer the service that you will go through it as though you are my coach,
Yeah.
and you will tell me which shot went where. And then I can also hire you to essentially be my coach, and we can talk about it. Is that
Yeah,
also
yeah.
something you offer?
We like talking to parents, and we like talking to their coaches, and just let's all get on the same page. I kind of want to understand, what are you guys thinking about, and what are we seeing, and how does all that match up?
Yeah, and sorry for the leading question. We have your 7-shot tennis system in our shop online. We already promote it, so I gave the leading question there to make it a little obvious, like I didn't already know. But in this case, we really like the concept because it can help a coach like Bobby, because he really knows what's going on within that information to be help a player. But it can also help the band instructor, tennis coach at the high school that doesn't know too much, because just by experiencing this information, he or she are going to know more.
That's very well said. Absolutely.
All right, I'm hired. I'm
No,
hired. Bobby's hired me to be a sales guy.
I love it from the perspective also, especially with high school coaches, that the kids usually have other coaches. And this is one of my
Yeah.
big gripes. And I wish we could figure out how to do. And Dave, you seem very successful at this. So hear me out on this and come up with your next great idea. How do we, in a basketball game, the kid does something that the coach doesn't want him to do. You get to call timeout, or the next whistle, you get to say, "Son, come right over here and sit next to me for a while." And the kid gets to know what he did wrong. And if you don't want to do it my way or the right way per se, this is where you're going to be continually sitting until we do make that adjustment. Tennis match, you got kids coming from other coaches. So the high school coach is dismissed. Well, I have my full-time coach. I think it could help the high school coach's credibility, number one, to say, "Hey, look, this is an outside body telling us this." And it's a great way to try to interject that sense of, you're not doing this. It's the old, "you're blowing it, kid." It's my favorite line in boxing history, when Angelo Dundee looked at Sugar Ray Leonard in the 12th round or the 11th round and said, "You're blowing this, kid. Tommy Hearns is beating you." In the next 2 rounds, Sugar Ray went out, and he's from close to you, Dave. So, in Maryland, but and I just remember that, and I love that. And I feel like tennis misses out on so much of that interaction. That this could help help solidify a coach-player relationship.
And by the way, Sugar Ray got involved in tennis too, with
Yeah.
sponsoring some players up in our area back in the day. Anytime you can collaborate with someone else, you got to keep one thing in mind, though, Bobby, and well, maybe this is only my experience. Every teaching pro I've ever met, and almost every college coach I've ever met, you got to understand, they're absolute geniuses.
Yeah, we've met all of them too.
They're total experts. So be prepared to try to absorb the pearls of wisdom that are coming at you. And
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Yeah, and well, I'm going to key in on the word collaboration, because that's what GoTennis wants to be, is a force for good for tennis, but a force for collaboration. Say, "Hey guys, why don't we all realize we're all geniuses? So let's treat each other as though we each have something to say, or we each have an expertise." Or as a coach, you know what? I don't want to chart this kid's match, so let Dave do it.
Yeah.
Right? Get the information, work together, because 7-shot tennis isn't coming for your job,
No.
They're there to help. And I think people need to hear that.
Good point.
Well, I love it for the perspective also to get the kid back on the court. And I agree with Dave said earlier, a couple of the most, it wasn't just tennis specific, but events where I quote unquote lost, I walked off feeling, damn, I did a pretty good job. And I think that's a great way to show somebody, hey, look, and we had it in baseball. I pitched a 2-hitter. I lost 6-4. How the heck do you pitch a 2-hitter and lose six, give up 6 runs? Well, a lot of things went wrong that day. So you still walk off of there saying, we did a lot of things right. We're building in the right direction. And instead of being so myopic, we deal with this with parents of 12-year-olds. We're getting ready for the Orange Bowl. And I'm like, great, he's 12. Maybe we shouldn't be worrying about the Orange Bowl. And oh, by the way, and I'm going to say this out loud, we might have to delete it. You're 5'3" and your wife is 5'1". Chances are your kid's not going to be playing at Wimbledon. I don't want to be the downer on this, Debbie Downer. But these are just facts. Let's get them to 16. Let's see how nature takes over and give them the best chance to succeed rather than just kill kids with wins and losses.
Dave, I'm not cutting that out. I am absolutely going to crop it out, and I'm going to make Bobby the most famous Debbie Downer. But I do want to jump at the end here. I want to jump to my favorite question, if you don't mind, Dave, and it's coming. So I'll jump right into it. But if you were king of tennis, and we've talked about a lot of things, and a lot of people have their own expertise, their own mindset. You come from a match analysis point of view. It doesn't have to be from that. It can be completely different. This can be professional, college, junior, social, anything in your mind that you can come up with. If you were king of tennis, is there anything you would do or change?
Yeah, I just want to see tennis be more fair for everybody. And I think there are some things that I hate. Please don't cut this out. I hate 10-point match breakers.
Okay.
It's solely for the purpose of shortening things up for the provider who's running the event. I don't like no ad because there's a lot of luck involved. I mean, it's not that so much luck. Usually the serving player is going to win the no ad, the tiebreaker point. But I think there's other options where if time is of the essence, shorten it down to mini sets, but let the kids play 3 of them, but then you split. Or you can do something I call a micro set instead of a tiebreaker. Let's just play till someone breaks serve, 2 more games, get to play to see if somebody can break serve and hold serve, and that's going to end it. But if you get to 2 all right, we'll come up with some kind of a way to break it. 4-point tiebreaker works very well. Let's just get to it. So that's if I were the king, there would be no 10-point tiebreaker. There'd be no 10-game pro sets, no 8-game pro sets. Either standard tennis, mini sets. If you want to do the 8-game, just do 2 mini sets. Tennis is so much, a chance to reset. You can reset when you get to deuce. You can reset at the end of a set. And let's just do that, okay? If everybody do that, I'll be happy.
I like it, Bobby. He came with a solution. It isn't just a thing that he doesn't like. He also says, here are the alternatives, which we appreciate with the King of Tennis answer.